already said, we're not going to recognize anything else beyond just a chair's statement. What message does that send out?
Well, the message is that this is a big win for multilateralism. Multilateralism is the biggest winner today. Global cooperation is the biggest winner today. Obviously, for South Africa, it's an enormous success in that in the year we're leading the G20, we've managed to secure agreement from all countries, barring for the US. But generally, it's a big win for the entire globe, as well as for anybody who believes in the principle of cooperation, collaboration, and multilateralism.
Okay, let me ask you now about the diplomatic note that the US embassy sent to Delco. They asked that we must make arrangements so that they can send the charged affairs and other delegates. My understanding is that they are officially marked absent. Does that mean, as Delco, you tell them, if you're going to send such a junior delegation, then you're not welcome here?
Clement, let me park that question. Let's just go back to the declaration for 1 second. There are two things that we cannot miss out of the declaration. One is the elevation of Africa and its challenges, its issues, and developmental opportunity. If you go through that declaration, you will find that Africa is mentioned close to 80 times. That has never happened before. If you look at the sessions today and the manner in which they are themed, as it reflected in the declaration, it's issues that are pertinent to the continent from a developmental point of view, from a climate resilience point of view and climate response, from a debt sustainability point of view. So we should celebrate that. The president had promised that this will be an African G20, and never before has the G20 elevated issues that are so pertinent to the global south, to Africa in particular, as well as obviously South Africa, because we share in some of these challenges, whether it's debt sustainability, whether it's climate change, whether it's other issues of how do we deal with critical minerals. We have frameworks now between the G20 and the rest of Africa, which is something that we should not be sidetracked from and miss from celebrating and observing.
But still on that, and we'll go to the question that we've packed in a moment because I haven't forgotten about it.
Because I want to move on from the US, that's why.
And that is important. And we've gone through, time to help listeners also understand the importance of some of the conversations that have taken place through the task forces. But don't you face a challenge when it comes to the implementation of these incredible recommendations and declarations that are being made today? Because America takes over the G20 presidency next year. Doesn't that complicate things for you?
So let me let you in some of the discussions that transpired yesterday, particularly with France and the UK during bilateral meetings that the president held. Now, these are G7 members. And one of the themes they discussed was how do we bridge the gap, or how do we ensure that we bridge the gap between the G20 and the G7? How do we, through the G7, take forward some of these issues? That's the first thing. So already there is a degree of commitment coming from developed economies or developed economic countries that are part of the G7, recognizing the importance of the work coming out of this G20, that this work must not be lost, it must be carried forward. Now, the UK will be the G20 president after the US. France will be leading the G7, I think, next year or year after. I stand to be corrected. And so that's a good sign. That's the first point. The second point, if you look at the inequality report or the report by the African High-Level Expert Panel on Debt Sustainability, that work can actually be implemented by a number of agencies independent of governments. The private sector can look at that report and look at its role. Academic institutions can do the same.